Standing atop a hill alongside I-95 in Elkridge, Maryland, is the historic Troy Hill House, a part of the Troy tract which has historical significance stretching back to the 17th century. In 1694, the land was surveyed, and John Dorsey would build a home on the 763-acre tract. Born circa 1645, John Dorsey, member of the prominent Dorsey family, owned several thousands of acres and many plantations throughout the Maryland colony, and decided to establish as his dwelling plantation the Troy tract, located in the Elkridge landing area. John Dorsey also acted as a delegate of Anne Arundel County, served as a justice, etc. The land at that period was a seemingly endless forest, roamed by the elks which would eventually go extinct, as an influx of settlers poured into Maryland and into Elkridge Landing. The primary crop planted in the region was tobacco, and most certainly grown on the Troy plantation. The farmland which once surrounded the property is now sprawling with developments, the Interstate, the Troy Hill Business Park, and the sports fields which exist on the outskirts of the still standing house. John Dorsey left to his grandson Basil Dorsey the estate, which he inherited in 1714 upon the death of John. The last Dorsey to reside on the property as a dwelling plantation was Basil's son, Colonel Thomas Dorsey, who led the Elkridge militia in the Revolutionary War. According to some accounts, the root cellar in the basement was used by Revolutionary War soldiers under the command of Thomas Dorsey. He died in 1790 and left the property, which was now 652 acres, to his wife Elizabeth. 18 years later, in 1808, Elizabeth Dorsey sold the plantation to Vincent Bailey for $5,950. At that point, the original wood-frame house that generations of Dorsey had lived in still remained. In the 1820s, the old house was torn down, and the Troy Hill House, which has now stood for 2 centuries, was constructed. According to an advertisement from the 1800s, on the farm there stood the Troy Hill House, a corn house, a small tenant house, other buildings, and a stone barn. The ruins of the old barn are at the bottom of the hill on which the Troy Hill House stands, and are quite fascinating to look at. The last residents of the home were Donald and Alice Dole, who moved out in the late 1960s. At that time, a pleasant white porch was attached to the house, part of an earlier renovation in 1947, which evidently came to ruin in the 1991 fire set by arsonists. Support beams and other minimal renovations were done to the shell of the building, and in the 2000s the county planned to renovate the entire house and convert the surrounding property into an easily accessible park. The building materials for that unfinished project have sat on the outside of the metal fence which surrounds the structure for several years, and the Troy Hill Manor remained uncared for. For more than 3 centuries, the Troy Hill site has been occupied by countless generations of Marylanders up until the last 5 decades, in which the land, as well as the ancient house, have been in a state of abandonment. The history of the site is worth knowing, and should be thought of when visiting the historic landmark.